Welcome to People I Know Show. I'm Curt Carstensen. Today it is part 2 of the 2-part episode with my conversation with John Hadden. John is one of my longtime good friends. I've known him since about 2003 at St. Cloud State University, and I chose him to be the person to help me express my vision for the world. My vision, which is to end the suffering related to race, religion, and sexual orientation. In part 1 of the episode, we got into the race topic and just began the religion topic. In part 2 here today, we will dive deeper into the religion topic. The conversation will begin with John opening up about his religious upbringing, and then I will get into mine, and we will go from there. If you have any questions or comments, feel free, email peopleiknowshow@gmail.com, and also you can find the show pages on Instagram, People I Know Show, and on Facebook, People I Know Show. Back into the conversation with John Hadden. So, John, we have different backgrounds and upbringings in religion. Mm-hmm. So if you would, I'll let you go first, and I'll give my story of, here we are today in our mid-30s, roughly, as we sit here in 2018 discussing this. And we've, as everybody has lived a full life of different experiences and can come to whatever conclusions you're at now. Doesn't mean that's the conclusion you'll have your whole life. I know religion's a perfect one for that for me, because I definitely think differently now than I used to. But tell me about your process to this point in your life and how you see the world in that way.
Sure. Most of my family are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which most folks in the country and the world know as Mormons. So I was raised Mormon. I stopped going to church when I was about 12 years old, which was also the same time that my parents got divorced. Now, that's been a pretty easy point for my family to point to and say, oh, that's why you fell out of interest with religion. But to me, I just didn't have faith in that religion. And I didn't want to continue to go to church when I didn't have faith. But I liked a lot of the things that religion taught, especially about family unity, which is sort of strange, I suppose, since my family was getting broken apart by a divorce at the time. But I thought that it was a really positive message. And, I think that was a 12-year-old's mind, and that mindset has continued to stay with me. And it's funny to see studies prove out, how much better, on average, by the numbers, people who grow up in a 2-parent household do in life and whatnot. So I still believe that family unity is a huge positive, if possible. But when it came to the church, I tried to go back a little bit in high school, and it wasn't doing it for me, because I thought that it would be wise of me to be a part of that religion, or a religion, but that was the one I knew, so I kept trying to go back. I tried to go back when I was early in college, and it wasn't for me. And then I tried to go back after I finished college for a while when I moved to a new part of the country. So growing up in Minneapolis, not a hotbed for Mormons. I think at one time at my high school, I was the only one among 2,000 students, as far as I knew, right? I didn't see anyone else from school at church when I went with my family occasionally. But when I moved to Idaho after college, that's a very Mormon area. And the town I was in was a particularly Mormon area. So I thought, well, now that I'm completely surrounded, maybe this will be a more positive experience for me. Let me give it a try. And I went, and I remember having a conversation with the leader of the local church that I was at. And, I was explaining that, I had some hesitations about the church. And, before I could really get into those reasons, he started talking about how I could confide in him about different issues, and how, he knew what it was like to be tempted. There are a lot of rules for Mormons, so temptation can be everywhere. And then he said, I know what it is to have a beer, because Mormons don't drink alcohol. So he was trying to relate to me. However, I'd never had a beer. I'd never had any problem staying away from alcohol. I thought that was a really easy thing to do. And it struck me as odd as I got older to see how many Mormons struggled with that. It seems like if you have faith in a religion and you believe it, it should be easy to steer clear of those things. I made the decision to steer clear of them. And when it wasn't just that one guy saying something, I would go out with friends in town to bars because that's where they wanted to go. And I was the designated driver. And then I would see other Mormons at the bar, and I'd hear Mormons talking about doing this or that. And I thought, none of you guys have any faith. You're all a bunch of hypocrites. I mean, you say you have faith, but you can't follow the rules. That doesn't seem right. So that's when I finally decided officially that I was done. No other church has caught my eye in the meantime. And I wouldn't say that I've studied religion extensively, but because of my experiences meeting other people, I have learned about their religions to a degree. And nothing has struck me as something I want to latch myself onto yet. I haven't closed the idea completely. Like I said, I think there are a lot of positive messages in there. I just wish that more of them were taken to heart. I think you probably know this, that when you do a test on someone about the Bible, for instance, atheists score higher on average than people who actually say that they're religious, because those people have questioned things. So they've read the literature that's out there, both the Bible itself and other literature. So they have knowledge about it. And then they've made the decision still to stay out.
Yeah, as I understand it, there are a few parts of maybe the Christian religion where some of the groups, I don't even know how to describe the different groups, honestly, but everyone's, if you're a part, there's like 200 some, or maybe way more, 2,000. I don't know. There's some, it's kind of an outrageous number of how the different groups within Christianity have the different rules.
We just got a new one, right?
I haven't been keeping tabs on it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Ukraine is starting their own Christian religion, breaking off from Russia as part of their whole political mess that they're going through. And so, yeah, I mean, they're going to keep coming.
Yeah, and because it seems like, it only seems logical, actually, because people are different and people think differently. And I guess in the case of, like, the example you gave about the people at the bar drinking beer, they would probably love a Mormon religion where it was okay to drink beer. And maybe that can exist, or maybe it does exist, but it's the natural way of things. People want to do things. And if the religion is being taught that they can do things a certain way and not a certain way, well, throughout history, it seems people have just started their own and just changed the rules for what they wanted and done different things. So my experience was that I grew up going to a Catholic church, and we would go, I think most Sundays we'd attend church, and I would pray, and I had my little kid's Bible that I think I read out of sometimes. And then I went through the Catholic process of First Communion and eventually confirmation. And I went to these things that I don't think I minded it. I don't know that I loved it. I thought it was probably a good thing for me to go through that, at least at that time of my life. But I do know that once I got through the confirmation process, I stopped going to church. I didn't necessarily stop believing in anything, but I no longer had an interest in doing the regular participation, where for many, many years, I would only go into a church for a wedding, a funeral, maybe a niece or nephew baptism or First Communion type of thing. And the reason I think, and I don't know the age exactly, but a few things happened prior to getting confirmed. And I think I'm fortunate to have been a part of a family that, at least at that time, was all Catholic. And I don't even know how everyone in my family, where they label themselves now, if they label themselves. But at least some individuals would be critical of how certain things were done. So it was okay for me then to be critical of something, observe that, and maybe even speak about it, and it wasn't a bad thing. I do imagine there are some people that would not be critical, at least out loud to others, about something involving their church. I don't know for sure. I don't know other people's experiences, but I imagine that is something that happens, where if you're never able to express these things, talk about these things, that's going to affect how you go about your beliefs and your participation in those types of things. So I do remember having the thought for the first time, as someone who grew up Catholic and was threatened that I would go to hell on many occasions based on some bad activity, that I began to think that, okay, wait, if I'm Catholic and this is correct, does that mean that everyone who isn't Catholic is going to hell? I'm right and they're all wrong and they're going to hell. That was I think, an early thought. And then later on, I began to think, wait a second. I somehow my brain got to the point of thinking, what if one of them is right and I'm wrong? That was the first time I thought about that. And that was a big thing for me. It's like, wait a second, should I be one of these other ones? What if I'm the wrong one and I'm going to hell because I believe, or something like that? And that was kind of an eye-opening thing for me, because at that young age, let's just say I was somewhere between 13 and 16, I didn't know anything about other religions. I knew that there was Jewish people, but I didn't really understand it. And I don't know that I even learned about Muslim or Islamic religion until an older age. I didn't really have an understanding of that. I guess I'd heard like they had a prophet, but not Jesus. And I don't know. I didn't understand it. But not only was I not reading much of the Bible, I certainly wasn't reading any of the holy books of any other religion. And I do remember or at least I think my memory is the first time I heard like that there were people that didn't believe in God. And to me, I think my reaction is they were the equivalent of like Satanists. Even though now I know Satanists aren't even Satanists, but anyhow, that if you didn't believe in God, that is like the worst possible thing. So if someone was an atheist, I don't know if I attach that word to that thought at the same time. If someone was an atheist, I thought they were like the worst people. That was how it was at somewhere, whether it was at church or home or wherever I might have taken in this information. These were the worst possible people that believed in some other way, probably were better, I guess, in that way than someone that was atheist. So I left, and never like officially, I didn't like offer my resignation to the church in any way, but I stopped participating. But for many years, I would say from the time let's say I got confirmed at 15 or 16, from the time I was 16 until early 30s, I just believed kind of my own thing. I believed in God, and I didn't want to be a part of any structured religion because I didn't know that I needed to be, didn't really want to be. I would pray occasionally. I would do this thing, and it's at such a habit that now that I don't do it, it's kind of hard to get rid of. When I would drive a really long drive, or an airplane that I was in would land, I would do my little prayer thing, and it kind of resembled Sammy Sosa after he hit a home run. And I thanked God. This is how I used to say it. The God there is, the one I believe in. That's how I rephrased my prayers, because I didn't know what God was. I just knew I believed, and I didn't want to be specific about what the God was, just God. And every time I felt like I arrived safely in a time where I could have easily not, I would thank God. But then somewhere in that time, I met some people, and some people that will eventually be on this show, perhaps, I met people that I think for the first time, I met someone that was an atheist. Like I guess I knew these people existed. And then I met someone and I realized this person was normal and just thought critically and thought differently. So that began me down a path where today, and now for the last couple of years, I do use that word to describe myself. I do call myself an atheist. And for those of you that are stunned or shocked by this, or maybe think that I'm suddenly some demon, the word atheist really, to the core of the definition, just means lacking belief. It's not that I believe there is no God, although it is somewhat similar. I just, based on everything I've learned in my life, and really actually for the first time trying to understand it, I just don't think there's the evidence to support there being a God. And I'm not saying there isn't one. There very well could be something that we as humans don't yet understand. So maybe I'd be better described as agnostic, but I've kind of attached myself to the word atheist for now. And I think it's a good word because I kind of take it in part because I think me lacking belief fits it, but also for the 15-year-old version of me that was taught about atheists and thought they were horrific people, I kind of feel like I need to be one of the people that represents the people that don't have a belief and can demonstrate to the world that an atheist is also a humanist. Like, we maybe care as much about people as anybody because we realize our purpose on this planet isn't from some divine creature or divine God. We're here, and I know what it feels to feel great, and I know what it feels to feel just awful. And I much prefer feeling great, and I much prefer other people feel great. That's why my vision is to end the suffering related to race, religion, and sexual orientation, because there's people that are living a much worse life than me, I think. And for a lot of them, it's because their race is not considered the best where they live, and they have struggles because of it. Their religion, they're in a minority, and maybe they struggle because of that. Or maybe because of the teachings of a religion, or just in general, other cultural reasons, someone's sexual orientation puts them in the minority and they are not treated well. So I've gotten to this point where I want other people to live an increasingly better life. And I think these are big topics to understand. And if I am the first atheist that you've ever known, well, my name is Curt Carstensen. I am an atheist. And I'm proud to, maybe not to be an atheist, but I'm proud to have spent the time and the effort to try to understand why I exist, and the fact that that's come out that way. Other people might take it the other way and become more religious when they take that same journey, because it is not an objective truth. It is a personal truth. So we can disagree on it, but I've gotten to this point, and I feel like I know there's going to be people that are somewhere in that journey that I was, and maybe where you are, where you're kind of just in between everything and haven't decided to dedicate the time, where it feels kind of weird sometimes to not really know what you believe or what you should believe. And just, it's okay, I think, to now that you know someone that just doesn't believe.
I know that for me, there was a weight lifted off when I finally made the full decision to leave. And the weight was that because there were so many rules within the Mormon religion, some of which I didn't feel were realistic, and so I felt like I was a bad Mormon. That's a shitty way to go through life, to feel like you're bad. The problem was I felt like I was a good person. And once I finally decided to leave the religion that I was a part of, it was so nice to think of myself as a good person instead of a bad Mormon. That was really empowering for me, and it made me a happier person. Now, that some people who know me might think that I'm never happy, but I am sometimes happy, and I'm happier since I've made that decision for myself. Now, my question as you talk is, one of the things I said is I think there are positive teachings. Do you think that your religious upbringing brought you positive morals that you might not have had, or might have been harder to obtain without having a religious background growing up?
I can never say for sure, but I think it was better. I'm not going to say it wasn't. Well, I can't say it was better, but because of the combination of some of the church's teachings and the way my parents interpreted them, it made me a better person. Whether or not those teachings need to come from religion, I know religion a lot of times claims them, and maybe in some cases they might have originated with certain religions. I don't know. And we probably will never know. Maybe there are historians that actually know this. But regardless, if I, from this point forward, don't have religion and I procreate and have kids, where I got these good messages from, maybe it's related to religion, maybe it's not, but I can still teach them moving forward. And generations from now, if everyone from underneath me and my family tree, if there is such a thing, didn't believe in anything, and at some point didn't even consider the fact that some other people do believe it, but yet we're still teaching positive messages, that certainly can continue and doesn't have to continue in that way. But yeah, there is an influence because that's where they learned them from. And for generations upon generations, that's probably what it was attached to. But I don't think religion owns the good messages of the world. They are just one of the religions collectively are like the largest group of how we are raised and the messages that are put through us. So it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to untangle those things. Just know that positive messages can be spread by someone, whether they believe or not. And it's okay, what anyone believes. Everyone's on this same personal journey. Mine has taken me one way. I'm not opposed to people believing. In fact, I think it's one of the most difficult things to do is to untangle everything that you're raised on, taught, the fact that for so many years I thought I was going to hell for all these things, and now hell just to me doesn't exist, never has, and it was an idea that started and really made some children's lives much worse because they had this fear put into their mind.
But don't you think it also leads some people to act better than they would? And we'd like to all believe that we don't need that motivation to act better, but even the founding fathers of this country, who specifically wrote a Constitution to separate religion from state matters, also all of those guys believed that religion was a powerful tool to help maintain an orderly populace.
Well, I will answer it with this. I know as a child, one of two things: if I was doing something that wasn't good or I needed to change my behavior, the negative reinforcement I would receive was, if you do that or don't do that, you're going to hell, or Santa Claus is watching you. And I think, and I'm sorry if there is a small child listening, and this is an opportunity to perhaps hit the old pause button or something else, or turn on your next favorite podcast, but don't do that. We can agree that Santa Claus doesn't exist, but we can also agree that the use of Santa Claus can influence a child for positive motivation or negative motivation. And I don't think it's any different. I think it's you're taking something that you taught the child that is real, and now you're using it against them. Or you can make up whatever other story and create positive reinforcement. Do this. This is good. And you get this reward. I think it can be the same as if you do that bad thing, you're going to be punished. It's how you decide to message to a child, and it can be totally detached from religion.
Fair enough. Now, you seem to think that positive messages can be conveyed without religion, which I don't disagree with by any means. How about actions? Now, I know that you've done some things with different atheist groups that are supposed to create positivity in the community or the world. They have activities built around that. But there are a lot of religious groups that meet on a weekly or more than once a week basis, and their activities are focused around charity and helping people. And, people pay tithes, and this money is supposed to go to that when it's not going to pay for lawsuits for child molestation and whatnot. It's supposed to go to helping the less fortunate. And I know that for the Mormon religion, they have warehouses full of stuff that they use to give to people who are in need. They, in their vast missionary capacity, which people are pretty familiar with, even if you don't know the religion that well, have gone to many third world countries and whatnot, and significantly helped with medical care and food and whatnot. Now, I'm always a little bit, have you seen the Book of Mormon play?
Yes,
the musical?
Yes.
The examples, while the show is kind of ridiculous, a lot of what's in there has truth. And the truth is that they go to these places and people become part of the religion because they want the stuff, right? They want the food, they want whatever, because they're in need. And I don't know how much of it gets given because you signed up and decided to get baptized into the religion, or if just everybody gets it. I've gone off track from my question, which is, can we have that same influence in a non-government, non-religious body? Or is government the answer? Do we need more social programs in order to pick up the slack from what is right now a dwindling religious community?
I'm going to leave the government out of this for now, because I think that just opens up a whole can of worms that we could talk for hours and hours, which you and I can do. But for the sake of the conversation today, I think I'll move it this direction. I totally understand how in a lot of religious church type of settings or synagogues, or what do the Mormon people meet at? What do they call that?
It's a church.
They call it a church. Okay. So a lot of good originates from these places. And I don't think that these places should stop because they're not going to, regardless of what I think.
Yep.
But I guess the purpose of me coming out as an atheist and having this conversation is I would hope that anyone that knows me, possibly liked me before I said that their opinion, it can change in whatever way it does, but it shouldn't automatically be, oh, he's awful because he's an atheist. It should be, oh, he thinks differently than I do, but I can see that he's doing good things, or at least attempting to do good things in the world. Oh, okay. That's okay. He can go on living his life doing good things if he's being a good person and trying to spread a positive message and helping people. That's okay. He thinks differently. I think as I think, that person thinks as they think. And if they're doing good things, they're good people. That's great. So I do know that humanist organizations and atheist organizations, they do, for the same types of causes, can create money to donate, things to donate that exists. The numbers of people organized in those areas is much less, so there may be a smaller current output in those ways. But part of that is, I don't know the latest polling numbers, but I think it's single digits still of people that represent themselves openly as atheists, non-religious. But by the latest, the one that I heard, of people that aren't affiliated. And in some of those cases, it's going to be people just haven't quite decided to either be open as someone that's agnostic atheist, or maybe they just haven't thought enough about it to ever get to that point. But it's about 25% of the people in this country just aren't involved with church in any way. So I think there's a large number of people that maybe just don't know where to put their effort if it's involving some belief or lack of belief. If you're not involved in a church, then if you're doing good in the world, you're doing it elsewhere. So if that's getting back around to answer your question, I'm not exactly sure, but I think it certainly can exist and will exist. But I do know, as uncomfortable as it was for me to get to the point to even have this podcast now, to say this to whoever's going to listen, there was a time where it was very scary for me to even tell anyone that I was an atheist, because I don't know, people judge it. They do. It's unfortunate. I'm looked at as very different, I think, by a lot of people. Some people are totally cool with it because they've met other atheists or they're more open-minded to it, but it's not something that a lot of people can even come out as in certain parts of this world. And maybe if I had a different job right now, a different way of creating my income, I would be afraid to say it. But I'm at the point where I think it's important that I, as an individual, can say that, I think differently in this way. It's okay what other people think, but I would like my way to be respected. And I'd like someone to meet me and not, if they know I'm an atheist, not just stay away from that subject. I would like someone to ask me about it. Just like when I meet someone that is Muslim, and at least once I get to know them a little bit, that's not going to be the first question I ask, but I like to ask about the religion and upbringing, and just trying to understand, how does someone get to believe something different than I believe? They're not bad for believing it. I know that because I know what I used to believe, and I know how I learned it. It's one of the most formative parts of our life, is being taught whatever religion our parents believe, and then either taking it further and making it a part of your life, or maybe possibly unraveling all that and undoing it. But all got to deal with it in some way, because it's given to us. We are not born anything. We are born into and then are taught.
That was nicely done.
Okay, thank you. So does that cover that topic? Should we move on to the last one?
We're going to solve all the world's problems. You got time for one more?
Well, perhaps not. But since this is not live, we will move forward, John. So the last topic of the things I would like to end the suffering related to race, religion, and sexual orientation.
So is every episode going to be these three topics from now on?
No.
All right.
I don't think so. Although as they come up, I think if someone's listened to this episode, they'll be more prepared for those types of conversations that might involve some of that. But no, it's not all about that. But the people that have, some of them certainly that have impacted my life, is because I've met them and they've been different in some way, maybe regarding one of these three things. And as I've gotten to know them, I realize, there's a whole nother way to think about this. Because now I know somebody that is quote unquote different, and getting to know them and talk to them has impacted me. And I feel like everyone has a story to tell. Some people are much better at presenting their story than others, but we've all lived this life that is interesting in its own way. And there's something about everybody, and maybe many things about some people, that are worth sharing. And this is a platform that I've decided to take on. The thing is, as I've in the early parts of creating this podcast, I realized no one was knocking down my door and telling me, Curt, you better start a podcast. I realized this is my idea, and I'm not sure that anyone even cares to listen, but I would like people to listen. So I've got to balance all that and try to see if people want to listen to me, A, and listen to me talk about some of these topics, B, and then C, listen to further episodes after hearing an episode like this. I have no idea, but I'm trying it. So, okay, let's get to this last topic.
Yeah, because sex sells. This should do well for your podcast.
Yeah, we probably, when we do the promotional video for this one, we should do the sex sells type of advertising, John.
I see.
Yeah, no. Okay. So sexual orientation, here's two straight white guy. I assume straight white guy for you is everything I know.
I still am, yeah.
Still am, okay. Even after being married, you're going forward?
That hasn't changed my mind, no.
Okay. Yeah, that really makes sense. So we're straight white guys talking about this, but the reason why, if we have any reasons that we're qualified, which we probably don't, but we're going to do it anyhow, is I think we've met a lot of different people, and we are, at least my opinion has changed over the years on this and becoming more and more open to what should be clear. We should all be taught, I think, in the early stages of life is people are different. People can be whoever they want to be. And maybe some people seem different in certain ways, but there's no reason to dislike them or hate them just because of it. It's a reason to try to understand people's differences and
or to not care about them.
To not care. To not care what they do, but at the very least not be upset at someone for them existing in the way that seems to be, to me, that is their most natural, automatic way of existing.
For them, it is. It'd be nice to represent. So we're going to talk about polygamy, I assume.
Polygamy, meaning one man being married to several women?
Well, that's the context that's usually used in the Mormon religion. Isn't that why you want to talk to me?
No, this is my vision, John.
Oh, okay.
My vision is to end the suffering caused by these things and just to get the different experiences that we maybe have that can open up this conversation for all the future conversations I have on any one of these topics.
I see.
Yeah,
So are you going to lead off? Are you going to tell me all about how you've changed over the years?
I will give one experience that opened my mind is, and we know some of these same people. I'm not going to mention any names right now. And I think we might have been at the same party. I'm not sure.
Is it Carl?
No, I don't think we know any Carls in common.
Okay.
There's the post-college party where I, at that time, had 3 friends that were gay, but I had no idea that they were gay. Mm-hmm. I knew them for a year, 2 years, like them. And then suddenly, the same night, they may have come out to other people before, maybe everybody else knew, but the same night, they all ended up coming out to me through conversation. And
they sit you down on the couch, all 3 of them at the same time?
No, not like that. It wasn't like that, John, but it did happen. And it was maybe aided by, we were drinking too, I'm sure. It was maybe the most mind-blowing experience in my life, because at that point, I think that I thought there was something wrong with gay people, or gay people were bad, or some negative thing about gay people. Mm-hmm. And then I had this most mind-blowing experience of 3 people that I knew and I liked, me finding out that they're all gay, basically within minutes of each other.
Did it feel like a prank? Did it feel like you were just going to, by the third one, there'd be 4 or 5 more people coming after that, ready to reveal their sexuality that you weren't familiar with?
Well, and this is how the night began to play out, to the point where I was so mind blown, I immediately started questioning my own sexuality because I just never considered this. It was so amazing to me how my mind could be so one direction, and then I get some new information that contradict it. And I, in the end, favored, because I liked these people, I realized what I thought was wrong. And just to have whatever I thought at that time just explode it, eviscerate it. Is that a word? I don't know.
Eviscerated?
Maybe okay. That's the one I was digging for, but I couldn't find. I was so mind blown that I lost that word from my vocabulary that night. But now, as I think about it, this experience, it changed my life, because suddenly I realized, I can start to think differently about gay people because I know them and I like them, where before I didn't know them and I just assumed I didn't like them, I guess. Mm-hmm. Do you have any experience that made you shift your thinking at all?
No, my mind has been pretty progressive on this, because at my high school, we had an LGBTQ club. I had friends that were in that club, or friends of friends that were in that club. And, by the time you're in high school, that's when you're discovering at least your initial sexuality, right? That's when you're starting to become aware of that, or, late middle school, that time frame. So just about the entire time that I was understanding my own interests, I saw that other people had different interests. And I just thought that's how it was, And as I got older, and it was the same thing with race, right? Because I grew up in areas that were pretty multicultural. So when I went to areas that weren't, I got surprised. When I went to college at a mostly white college and lived in the dorms with mostly white people, mostly from smaller towns, that was new to me. That was different. And that's when I realized that there were people who didn't think the way that I did, in kind of the reverse that you had. And so I, had gay friends and bisexual friends in high school, and I didn't think that much of it. There was the disappointment that there were women out there who were even less interested in me than, your average woman, because things did not go well from that standpoint in high school. But, that's about it. I never thought too much about it being a problem. And it weirds me out today that people care so much, or that we can be whipped up into a frenzy about something that's never been a problem. Transgender people going into a bathroom is a big deal for the last few years because someone decided it would be a big deal, whereas it was never a problem before that. And it really isn't an actual problem now, as near as I can tell, but people want to be upset about it. People want to use it as a wedge issue to drive us apart. I just would rather people did what they wanted to do if it doesn't affect me. And this decision for other people, has never affected me.
And we are a part of the perhaps fortunate majority that was born, grew up, and I assume on the spectrum of sexual orientation, we were so far to the one side, that side of being straight, that it never really came into play. But there's people that I can't know their experience exactly, but it's a really confusing thing for them for their entire life, for the people that aren't straight and for the people that feel like they're in the wrong body, things that I will never understand. And so therefore I can speak very little about it, except for the fact that I don't understand it. So let me refer to them to get their opinion. And I will not be someone that says, you were born a male, you're a man. And that's what you have to be. No, I don't know. I do not know that. There's so much I do not know about living on this planet and being a human being. And that's the first thing I realized. I can't speak for that person. I may want to sometimes. I may try to speak for someone I shouldn't speak for. But what I've realized is, okay, wait, thinking back, I can't speak for that person because I don't know their experience. And I don't think this is a common theme for people, unfortunately. We think we know what's best for everyone. I do think, and sometimes I know what's best for other people, but truly I don't. I just want to give a possible word of advice, something to consider, but I know that I can't tell someone this is what they must do because I'm not them. I don't know what it's like to be them.
And it's important to recognize the struggle that some of them have to go to, because you asked me about, is there something that changed my mind? And I responded, no, there wasn't anything that changed my mind, but there were things that made me aware that to other people, this was a problem. And Matthew Shepard was a big part of that. To hear that people did that to him just because of his sexual identity it was really upsetting to me to think that it wasn't, as far as I remember, and it's been a while, obviously, since that incident, it wasn't that he was hitting on someone or groping someone or molesting someone. He was just existing. And
I don't even know this reference, so you're going to have to give me a few more details.
Matthew Shepard was in a rural area, I want to say of Wyoming or Montana. I don't remember all the details, even though he was just back in the news this week because his remains were laid to rest in a new location, I believe. I probably shouldn't have brought it up. I feel so ignorant right now talking about it. But he was in a rural area and he was beaten to death and left out in the elements after that. And he was found and it was reported that that's why it had happened. And that was so strange to me. And then, I would learn about this hatred that people had through the media, and not just news, but entertainment media. A movie like Brokeback Mountain, which was a massive hit in terms of a film like that. And to go watch and see these two people that wanted to be together, but decided that they couldn't be because the world wouldn't accept it. And it was really similar. I might be conflating the two stories because I'm pretty sure that took place in Wyoming or Montana. But yeah, that's how I learned about that. And race was kind of a similar situation for me. I knew there were different people and I didn't think much of it. But as I grew older, I learned that there were lots of people out there who disliked people for those reasons. And that was very strange to me. And it still is, to be honest with you, even though I'm much more familiar with those opinions now.
It's strange to me, but I can understand it because I can see how that happens. If someone teaches you something as a child, I think one of a few things can happen. One is if it's like in school in second grade and it's not important, you might forget it. Or at some point, you'll decide that whatever that you were taught, you don't agree with. But if it's taught to you and reinforced to you and you hear it all the time, more than likely, you're going to buy into it and you're going to share that teaching, whatever it is, no matter how potentially horrific it is, that there's a potential for the human mind to hold on to an idea, no matter how bad it might be, at least to some of us, and hold on to it. And then to the story you referenced, to act on it, to have this hatred for someone that's different in such a way that in your mind, you think the best solution, or it's funny, or some aspect of that is to kill them. I guess I'm fortunate that my mind doesn't work that way. I'm not sure what's different about someone that gets to that point, but I do know that I've been able to undo things that have been in my mind and change thoughts. I had the mind-blowing experience. I'd mentioned about learning my friends were gay, and I'd imagine certain experiences in our lives can get us to begin to step back from some of our ideas. And the term I like to use is unlearn. Everything that I've learned, I realize that I should unlearn it, need to unlearn everything, maybe relearn it the exact same way because it is the right thing to learn. Mm-hmm. But to just assume because I have something in my mind and I think it's true that it is true does not make it true. It just means that's what I currently think. To unlearn it, to relearn it in some other way possibly is important. And I learned this some years ago, and I just think everyone has their own existence and experience and people do things differently, and I can't tell everyone else what to do, but I do like to present the idea that maybe there's another way to think about something you currently think, no matter what it is.
I can't get the story of the three guys. I know those guys, and I know about that, but I don't think I knew at that time. And to hear that they came to you one at a time, and it was like this Three Musketeers thing, and then you were D'Artagnan, thinking that maybe you should join up too, and I had no idea.
Well, at that point in my life, my sexual experience, now I'm maybe getting into too many details, it's so limited that how was I to know what I thought I knew? And that was just, it was just
Plus you'd had a few drinks that night.
Yeah. So
easily persuadable.
So I guess going back to that to finish that thought, since you're still attached to it, one of them was dating another one of them. And somehow I learned that one or both of them was gay, and then they kissed in front of me, and it was like, what? And then like, oh, this other guy too, he's gay. Like, what? Then I went and talked to him or someone, and he's like, yeah. And it was just so crazy. And I think everyone needs one of those experiences where you like somebody, you genuinely like people, and then you find out something so different about them. And maybe that me talking, even though I'm not in front of people right now, maybe me earlier in the episode saying I'm atheist is that type of mind-blowing thing. Like, if you really already liked me and you've been taught to not like atheists, well, now you got something to deal with. And if it means you're not going to like me, then that's unfortunate. But hopefully it's a mind-blowing experience. Like, wait, atheists exist and Curt's one of them. I've got to rethink things.
I can see why you did it, but you went for the one thing that you think that you're a minority in. But anybody could be listening to this podcast, and if you're an open-minded person and like talking to new people, then if there are folks out there who don't know a white guy very well, then they could meet you. Or they don't know straight people very well, then they could talk to you.
That is true, John. I'm open to talking to anybody, and I'm both looking forward to and slightly apprehensive of the possible kickback I could get from even stating what I stated today, because I know some people don't like the idea that I exist. That's the one thing I think about me that some people in this world are going to automatically hate about me.
I don't know. You're an American.
Okay, well, it's one of two things then.
There's probably plenty of people around the world that aren't too happy about that.
Well, I think for the sake of time, we are near the finish of the conversation, John, but I would like to offer the being wrong segment.
Ooh.
Is there something that you're wrong about? Or we're like, this whole conversation is about things I feel like I'm wrong about. That's what I want it to have come out through this podcast in time. A lot of it came out tonight, I think, in bits and pieces, but I want my guests to talk about something that they're wrong about.
Sure. First of all, thank you for letting me ask you so many questions on your podcast. You're the host, and yet you let me ask a bunch of questions. But that's what I enjoy about our relationship, are these conversations, because this is kind of a regular night for us.
Well, when we do hang out and we don't have our phones in our hand, we're forced to talk to each other, and we find that we enjoy talking to each other.
And so this story has nothing to do with anything we've talked about, but it's one that I can't get out of my mind. And this is a hard transition, but we're just going to turn towards it. And this is the paper bag story. And I've told you this story before, but I work for a retailer, and that retailer sells goods in stores, and those goods are put into bags. Now, like most stores in this country, they use plastic bags primarily. However, some states, some cities, some counties are switching to have ordinances that take away plastic bags. So they're switching to reusable bags. And we had one particular store that was switching to all paper bags. So the big day was coming when they were going to use only paper bags. And so they got their normal truck, and that truck had 20 pallets of paper bags. For reference, a truck holds 26 pallets. So the entire truck almost was taken up with just bags that day. So they had 20 pallets of paper bags. And I learned that day, as I was assisting them with some other issues, that the same number of bags that comes on one pallet of plastic bags is equal to 11 pallets of paper bags. So it takes 11 times as much shipping for the same number of bags to have paper versus plastic. Now, the reason I bring this up, and the reason that I'm wrong, or might be wrong, I guess I still haven't figured out the carbon footprint of all this, is the assumption that I always had is that paper is better for the environment. And it still very well could be. However, how do we balance the production of those paper bags versus the production of the plastic bags? And then the transportation costs, because you're talking about 11 times as much diesel being burned, 11 times as much fumes going into the air, pollution going into the air from that fuel being burned. Now, obviously, the paper bags don't last quite as long in terms of breaking down and composting as plastic bags.
And you cut down trees to create them.
Yes. So there's all sorts of factors. And to me, all this brought about was it changed an assumption that I had. And that's something that we have talked about. So I'm going to tie it back in there, right? I had learned that paper is better than plastic in my younger years. And this experience, finding out that it takes 11 times as much to transport those bags as it does plastic, made me think that maybe it's not as easy an answer as paper is automatically better than plastic bags. And so I should really do the research and figure it out just for my own purposes. But I found it interesting that something that I had believed to be a truth, even if it was an inferred truth without hearing direct facts on it, to have that challenged in a very concrete way. In terms of, I don't know the whole circle, but I definitely know it takes 11 times as much transportation cost, both, dollars wise and environment wise, to get those bags to that store.
So what it might be is we just have two bad options, the two most common options for many decades, or however long those have been in play. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's the third, more reusable bag. And that I have a reusable bag I've had for about 2 years that I use pretty much every time I go grocery shopping. But when I go to stores that aren't my main grocery store, which is Aldi, that sometimes I'm in there and I don't bring that bag with me, and then I get some plastic bags, and then I use those for like my garbage bags and my little garbages, which at least gives them a second use, better than using them one time, bringing stuff home and throwing them in the trash.
Plus, you were probably going to buy plastic bags anyway for those, right? Probably.
Yes, I suppose. So I don't want to buy little plastic bags, and I know I can get those for free. But again, it's only 2 uses. Bring stuff home, go back into the trash. And there's probably better ways that we somehow haven't figured out yet. Maybe there's just not a better way, and that's why we haven't figured it out yet. But knowing that neither option is good, I think is a big first step to at least reusing the reusable bags. Or maybe there is a fourth option, like, I don't know, just don't buy very many things and carry it with your hands sometimes. That might not work for almost anybody ever, unless you got like a big thing of toilet paper. There's no other choice. But then again, that's in plastic. So what are we going to do?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to do some research on carbon footprint of plastic bags versus paper bags. If you ever have me on again, we will revisit that topic.
Well, the people that were not beating down the door for me to have a podcast will maybe now beat down the door for you to be back on the podcast.
I'm just trying to, give them a reason to come back.
Yeah, well, you should do the research. And as we're wrapping this up now, I do realize this will be the end of part 2 of a 2-part episode.
You're going to air the whole thing.
Oof. Well, there's time to reconsider as we're having an on-air production meeting at the end of the podcast. But for the moment, I thank you, John, for covering these topics with me, the topics that I think are important, but in some ways have kind of been dreading putting out there because people are going to think all sorts of things, and now what's going to happen? I don't know, but I think it's important for me to live out my vision to end the suffering related to race, religion, and sexual orientation, to give my thoughts on these topics and then continue it by talking to people that have impacted my life that are much more directly involved in all 3 of those, perhaps than 2 straight white guys that are sitting here in Minneapolis this evening having a conversation.
Yeah, just remember, only God can judge you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for your support by listening to People I Know Show. If you'd like to support the program further, all I ask of you is to rate and review wherever you listen to the podcast, or if nothing else, feel free to email the show, peopleiknowshow@gmail.com. You can like the page People I Know Show on Facebook, or follow People I Know Show on Instagram. I'm Curt Carstensen. Thanks for listening.